Our next speaker is Megan Westgate, and she's the executive director of the Non-Gmo Project. And she actually helped start the project after her work at the Food Conspiracy Co-op in Tucson, Arizona. And that showed her firsthand how much trouble consumers actually have in figuring out how to avoid genetically engineered food. So the Non-GMO Project is the only 501c3 nonprofit that's exclusively dedicated to the non-GMO mission, and it's the founder of Non-GMO Month. And the project's working to protect the non-GMO food supply and to advance the consumer's right to know. And I think Megan is going to actually talk about what genetically engineered food actually is.
Hi. So the Non-GMO Project, as Winona said, is the only nonprofit in the country dedicated to protecting a non-GMO food supply. Our mission is to make sure that we maintain a non-GMO food supply and also protect consumer choice. And so, yeah, I do want to just, this is maybe backing up a little bit because we've been talking a lot about GMOs already in this panel. Raise your hand if you feel like you could confidently, without looking at that slide, give a definition of genetically modified organism. Okay, good. Very honest and typical. Like there's a lot of confusion, and even among people who care about the issue, there's confusion about what genetically engineered means. So we'll start with just this definition, and the slide transparency changed a little bit, but genetically modified organisms are plants or animals created through the process of genetic engineering. This experimental technology forces DNA from one species into a different species. The resulting GMOs are unstable combinations of plant, animal, bacterial, and viral genes that cannot occur in nature or in traditional crossbreeding. So the key thing about GMOs is that there's DNA from multiple different species being forced together, and there's instability inherent in that process. DNA is a very complex, dynamic, living thing that we still do not fully understand, and so this manipulation of it can have all kinds of unintended consequences, and as Becky mentioned, there's concerns about allergens and other health concerns because long-term safety studies have not been done. So I think one of the things to look at with an eco-label is, why has it been developed? And in the case of the Non-GMO Project, there are about 50 other countries around the world that have mandatory labeling of GMOs, and that includes all of the countries in the European Union, Australia, Japan, China, Russia. Most other developed nations have government-mandated labeling that disclose to the public that there are genetically engineered ingredients present. And the reason for that is because it's an experimental technology. The long-term impacts on the environment and on human health are not known. And there's this fundamental thing, as Winona was speaking about in the beginning, most people want to know what's in their food. And so there's a real need to address this issue specifically. In the United States, the world's largest biotechnology company, Monsanto, is based here and has an enormous influence over federal policy, which is the main reason why we don't have labeling, unlike all of these other countries. And so the Non-GMO Project was developed to kind of fill that information gap as more and more people become aware of this issue and realize that they don't want to feed themselves or their children an experimental technology that's labeled and even banned in a lot of countries. There was just this information vacuum. And as Winona mentioned, there is, on the California ballot in November, there is Prop 37 for mandatory labeling of GMOs. So California may lead the nation in this way, and we'll be talking later in the panel about mandatory versus voluntary labeling. But to date, efforts in the United States to have mandatory labeling of GMOs have not been successful, and so the Non-GMO Project was created to address that need. And so this is a market-based strategy. And our mission really is to protect a non-GMO food supply. Because of the lack of labeling and because of the biotechnology influence in this country, GMOs are presently in about 80% of all packaged food in a grocery store. And looking at that in contrast with other countries, again, in the EU, everything has to be labeled. In some countries in the EU, GMOs aren't allowed at all, or very few of them have been approved for production. If you look at us compared to the rest of the world, in the United States, we grow about as many GMOs as everyone else in the world put together, and it's contaminating a huge portion of our food supply, and a lot of people just don't even know that it's happening. And so our strategy is to leverage the power of the marketplace to protect a non-GMO food supply so that as in the future, if we find out, as studies are increasingly pointing to, that there are real environmental and health concerns with this technology, we want to make sure we've maintained a supply of safe, healthy seeds and food crops. And so what we do is we use our eco label to protect that food supply and to give people information. And the project was started by retailers, and we were seeing people coming into the stores and saying, how do I avoid GMOs? And there wasn't really any good answer. As Becky said, non-GMO is an unregulated claim, so you see GMO-free on all kinds of packages, but that doesn't mean that a company has tested or done anything meaningful to back it up. So that's what the Non-GMO Project is, bringing transparency and consistency into this unregulated area. And these are just some images of things that are happening in stores. You can see the label actually on products, and then a lot of retailers also put up shelf tags to make it extra easy. And here in Santa Monica, Co-Opportunity is a big leader in this. They maintain a list of all of the products they sell that are Non-GMO Project verified, and they have that on the homepage of their website, and they do a lot of labeling. And the last thing here is just to show that eco-labeling can be a very successful way of protecting the food supply. So what we're seeing with the Non-GMO Project, we're a relatively young organization, and our growth is exponential. Right now, Non-GMO Project Verified is the fastest growing label claim in the natural products industry. And this shows, as of the first quarter of 2012, our sales are at almost $1.5 billion, and that actually doesn't include Whole Foods and Walmart. So sales of Non-GMO Project verified products are now at over $2 billion a year, and that's up from, we didn't even really have verified products a few years ago. So it's growing very quickly, and as a result, our goal has always been to protect and make a change all the way back to the food supply, and we are starting to hear those stories of farmers changing what they're planting, production factories changing their sourcing habits because of this demand that's all driven by the eco label. So, thank you.